Hello and welcome to the Resource Nexus podcast. I'm your host, the Elevated Rim, captain of the Vin Allen Lubin fan club. Free my boy. Welcome. Here we are, finally delivering on the mock coaching carousel. We've taken some time to add a few names and incorporate feedback from our initial article over on theresourcenexus.com. Now, for this podcast, we're going to break it down job by job that we think could open. For each important position, we'll try to throw out a couple of names that we think are reasonable fits. Or, let's be honest, they're names we think should get a call. Obviously, this whole process is a total crapshoot, chaotic, and unpredictable. If even one of these predictions hits, it'll be nothing short of miraculous. Why? Because the coaching carousel is never ending. Unexpected moves, surprise firings, it's all part of the show. As we mentioned in our last podcast, this is all for fun. It's not super serious. It's just our best educated guesses based on some objective knowledge, things like coaching resumes, job levels, pay scales, program history, and so on. But let's be real for a second. Can we trust athletic directors to be rational, logical decision makers? Yeah, right. We've seen them fire coaches with stellar records just to hire their old buddy from a decade ago because their wives swapped recipes and are Facebook friends. It's like any other industry. It's not just about the resume. It's about who you know, who you like, and sometimes just plain cronyism. Now that we've gotten the cynical stuff out of the way, let's dive in. So, Texas, Billy Donovan. All right, folks, let's talk about the white whale of coaching opportunities, Texas. In my humble opinion, this is the job. And you better believe they're going for the big guns. Picture this, Billy Donovan, back in college basketball, leading a program with unlimited resources. Sounds wild, right? But here's the thing, he's shown interest last year. Remember the Kentucky Whispers last year? Combine that with the Bulls going absolutely nowhere, and you've got a perfect storm. His legacy is so wasted in the NBA on play-in teams, he has to see that too. Now, let's not forget the power of NIL. It's taken a lot of the old headaches out of recruiting. With the portal, you don't have to recruit 16 years olds as much as you did, and basically you can outspend teams. Suddenly, the idea of running the show at Texas becomes a whole lot more appealing with their resources. And this isn't just any program. Texas has a track record of high expectations and moving on quickly. Rick Barnes, gone. Shaka Smart, out. Chris Beard, we all know what happened there, pushed out or fired. Rodney Terry might be the guy for now, but let's be honest, long term, not likely. You don't go from those to Terry. This is a dream job for someone like Donovan, a chance to put their mark on something and do historic, an SEC powerhouse with limitless potential. Be the first to do things that haven't been done before. That's legacy building material. And if Donovan says no, well, Texas is the kind of place that could still steal an established power conference coach, maybe even one you wouldn't expect, even if Kentucky couldn't. At Kentucky, you are just the next guy to win there if you win championships. At Texas, you are basically the first. I think Donovan still has one more chapter in him in college to cement his legacy. Indiana, Dusty May, returning to his alma mater to lead a historic program with some of the most passionate fan support in college basketball. It's a match that feels like destiny, right? Sure, the buyout might be a hefty one, but let's be real. Indiana would probably work with him to make it happen. Here's the thing. Indiana didn't pour all those NIL resources into the program just to end up with a poorly conceived 60th ranked squad. The fans, they're not going to stand for that, or at least be happy with it. If the push for change gains momentum, Dusty May could absolutely be the guy. Now, there's always the possibility that May decides to stick it out at Michigan for a bit longer. If he signals that he's staying put, Indiana might press pause and revisit the idea next year. And honestly, in that scenario, his odds of making the jump to Indiana skyrocket. But if the Hoosiers decide they're moving on and May isn't willing to leave what's essentially a lateral job at Michigan, there are other intriguing names to consider. Ben McCollum, that's one I'd have my eye on. Josh Schertz, he might be arriving just a touch too late to the party. Timing is everything in life, it seems. And let's not forget Steve Alford. He really should have gotten more traction for this job in the first place. Say what you want, but he'd still be a massive upgrade over Mike Woodson. Sean Miller taking over at Michigan. If May left, that's a name that might be in the mix probably if it opened, and it seems like he's looking for to leave Xavier, if rumors are correct. Miami seems to be out there as well, or even a fallback option for Texas. But here's the kicker. If Miller does pack his bags, Xavier fans probably wouldn't panic too much. Why? Because the obvious call to replace him is Chris Mack. It's a move that would tie up that coaching carousel thread with a nice, tidy bow. Now, originally I had Villanova opening up and Shaheen Holloway stepping in to take the job. Now, I get it. Leaving your alma mater is no small thing. But let's be real, the NIL situation at Seton Hall looks rough. And while Holloway has a solid resume, the NIT championship last year and an Elite 8 run with a 15 seed in recent years, there's always that risk factor. If Seton Hall racks up a lot of losses, it could make landing a job like Villanova a tougher sell for Holloway. Don't get me wrong, though. I think Holloway's still a top-tier coach and would absolutely be an upgrade. But let's not kid ourselves. Villanova, I would imagine, has bigger aspirations. They've got resources, reputation, and yes, the shadow of Jay Wright's legacy looming over every candidate. And let's talk about that. Following in Jay Wright's footsteps, that's some pretty tough expectations. If it's not Holloway, Chris Collins and Mike Rhodes are two other P5 coaches I'd put on the short list. They got the chops. But here's the kicker. Is Villanova really as attractive a job as they think it is? That's the question. Virginia. Mike Rhodes, here's the thing. The last Penn State coach made the jump to a mid-level ACC program. So why not Rhodes? It's a return to Virginia. And let's be honest, it just feels like a fit. The fans there seem to want something very different, and he would be up-tempo. Then again, he has ties to Penn State as well, but Virginia is the better job in my opinion. Other names we've heard there that could also be options are Ryan Odom and Richie McKay. I mocked Ryan Odom to Virginia Tech instead. Of course, I was told that was stupid by various fans. Now, here's the deal. VT can throw down some serious cash, and Odom seems like he's in full ladder climbing mode, bouncing around the country to Utah State and back to the East Coast. He's not making as much at VCU as he could at any Power 5 conference. He also was an assistant at Virginia Tech for 7 years. If you live at a place that long, you can't hate it. I think there is evidence here that he will take the best Power 5 offer he can get. Plus, VCU nearly lost his best player last year to the portal, a guy that liked him enough to follow him from Utah State and had a strong relationship with. VCU's place in college basketball isn't what it was before NIL. So, Florida State, here's the deal. Will Wade has a huge opportunity to lead a prominent ACC program in a talent-rich state in the South. Wade feels more like an SEC guy, right? The problem is there aren't many SEC jobs opening, so FSU might just be the closest thing. And hey, let's not forget, they don't exactly care about violations historically, but that lawsuit from last week, yeah, it's making waves, and it looks like FSU's got some NIL issues that could really hurt recruiting. So now I'm thinking Wade might be looking elsewhere. Miami's an attractive option he could choose instead. I actually think Miami could be the sleeping giant of the NIL era. Early in the NIL era, they were paying guys more than most schools, but now seem to have been overtaken. That said, having a chance to live in Miami in the winter and also have money to enjoy it should be more of a draw for them than it was previously. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Richard Pitino, that name might be floating around too. This guy's been rebuilding his image ever since the Minnesota days, and honestly, he's got some serious potential. But these Florida ACC jobs, hard to predict. Honestly, if Xavier doesn't open up, Chris Mack could be in the conversation. The one long-term advantage FSU seems to have is they are likely at some point to exit the ACC. So, Iowa, Ben McCollum. Now, this guy, he seems a little picky, right? Like, maybe he's got a soft spot for the state of Iowa, and honestly, it feels like he might just be in the right place at the right time. If the stars align, Iowa could be the perfect. If Fran McCaffrey decides to retire or Iowa helps him to make that choice, they might want to before McCollum's star gets too bright. Indiana would be the other job to watch for McCollum, and I do think with all the D2 history, he is more than qualified. It's like Bo Ryan's career trajectory from D2 and then to leave after 1 year at Milwaukee. Let's talk Wake Forest. Bob Ritchie. This guy's been waiting for the right opportunity to lead an ACC program in the region. He's patient, but you got to wonder if this is finally his year. Maybe the job doesn't open up, but I do think 2025 could be the year Ritchie either steps up to a similar job or grabs the best paying gig on the market. I mean, NIL and the portal have totally shaken up his style. And let's be real. Guys like Slauson, they aren't sticking around for 5 years anymore. But here's the big question. Will Ritchie adapt? Will he dive into the portal himself? Now over to Arizona State. Bryce Drew. This is a huge opportunity to rebuild his career by leading a Pac-12 program. And they've got solid NIL backing too. After his time at Vanderbilt, though, I feel like Drew's going to be a little more picky. Don't forget, Grand Canyon, they've got a ton more resources and potential than most mid-majors with a top 80 budget, conference mobility, 100,000 students, and 7,000 fans in the stands. It's tough to overlook that. And lastly, Minnesota, Nico Medved, returning to his home state to take on a Big Ten program with serious potential. I mean, that's the dream job, right? Also, keep an eye on Kamani Young. He could be another name in the mix for Minnesota if they make a move. It's a name I would be less inclined to be excited about as if I were a fan coming off the Ben Johnson experiment. I think they will be looking for someone who has been a head coach. All right, let's dive in. Penn State, Jared Calhoun. This could be his big break. He gets the chance to coach in the Big Ten, not far from where he grew up and where he spent most of his career. It's a clear ladder climb opportunity, and he's climbing and is more of an East Coast guy like Odom, who left after 1 year at Utah State too. And hey, let's be real, I think Rhodes will bounce if he has a solid season at Penn State. Now, from what I've gathered from their fans, it sounds like Rhodes had a bit of a standoff over money with VCU and kind of took the job at Penn State in protest. So it's safe to say this probably isn't Rhodes' last stop if that's true, and he can get a better job before Penn State does him in. It's a tougher place to win. Speaking of VCU, here's a name for you, Takayo Siddle. You know, he feels like more of a true VCU coach than Odom ever did. If Odom bolts, and let's face it, that seems likely, Siddle is the guy I'm keeping my eye on for that spot. Now, let's switch gears to the West Coast. Grand Canyon, big potential there. If Drew leaves, I guarantee a bunch of quality coaches will be knocking on that door. But here's the twist. The more I think about it, the less likely it is that Drew actually leaves, unless some special power conference job comes calling, not after his Vandy experience. But hey, if he does, I've got a personal favorite, Nevada Smith. Yeah, you might not know his name, but trust me, you'll want to. Smith's a former G League head coach from West Texas and out west, and he's currently an assistant at Marquette. And here's the kicker. He was ahead of the curve. Over 10 years ago, under Daryl Morey's direction, Smith's team was shooting 45 threes a game in the G League when the whole league thought he was crazy. He also worked under Nick Nurse and is still in his early 40s, and his innovative mindset is something a lot of programs should be paying attention to. A total under-the-radar guy who could be a perfect fit for a program looking to shake things up. All right, UNLV, Chris Gerlufsen, big opportunity to lead a storied program with more support. I mean, he's done an impressive job keeping things together at San Francisco after Todd Golden left. San Fran might be a Todd Golden return spot if things don't work out there, but leading UNLV, that's a whole new level. This is a chance to get the Rebels back on the map in a huge way. Next up, Mitch Henderson at Boston College. Now, moving to the ACC is a big deal from the Ivy. You're stepping into one of the most competitive conferences in college basketball, but let's be real. Henderson's got to be picky about this. Moving from Princeton, where he's been so comfortable, is no small thing, his alma mater. But, hey, Sidney Johnson did it before him, right? Went from Princeton Fairfield, even as a Princeton alum, so it can be done. But here's the thing. The Ivy League's no joke these days. It's a more serious conference. So, Boston College, maybe not the hottest landing spot, but there's still potential. And while people think Henderson's more on the level of a Villanova guy, 2 NCAA tournament appearances in 14 years. Yeah, that feels more like Boston College level to me. Now, if Seton Hall opens up, don't be shocked if Luke Murray gets a look. Let's be honest, assistants don't usually get those power conference jobs, but Murray, he's got the pedigree. He's been part of a dynasty, and this job is practically made for him. Plus, Seton Hall's recent coaching history is interesting. 2 coaches in a row left for big gigs, Maryland, Michigan. So Holloway could be next. Yeah, Murray probably got that extra buzz because of his famous dad, but I think at this point he's only still at UConn because of the chance to three-peat. And speaking of assistants, let's talk UConn. I know I got mocked for suggesting Buffalo as a possible landing spot for Kimani Young, but hear me out. Alabama assistants, when they were top of the college hoops, world #1 seed, and first ever Final Four, jumped to places like Arkansas State, Little Rock, and UTSA, making a fraction of what they could have had at a power program, 300 to 400,000. And Buffalo, yeah, they paid Nate Oates 700,000 years ago. They're willing to spend. Plus, they hired Villanova's top assistant associate head coach under Jay Wright, who, let's be real, has been a disaster and deserves to be fired after just 2 years. Buffalo could be a serious destination for top assistants looking to make the jump. Hurley and Oates won there as well. Tulsa, Eric Henderson, stepping into a head coaching role in the AAC after some solid success in the Summit League. I don't know what happened to Concole, but Tulsa's a job that has historically helped elevate coaches like Bill Self, Tubby Smith, and Nolan Richardson. Heck, it even helped Buzz Peterson land at Tennessee. So there's definitely some pedigree here. This could be a big leap for Henderson. Utah State, Bucky McMillan. Now, I've heard that McMillan won't leave Alabama from fans, but I'm just going to say it. Utah State is hot right now. It's the kind of job that can propel you up the coaching ladder. Everyone seems to win here and quickly. And let's not forget, they've hired an Ohio guy and a Virginia guy before. Doesn't seem like they care where you're from. Just as long as you're the best mid-major coach around they can get their hands on. And honestly, I respect that. I do think they could be hiring for the second year in a row after the success they are having again. New Mexico, Luke Barnwell's stepping into the spotlight at New Mexico in this mock because I don't know who else fits. It's a program that's got a passionate fan base and a coaching pedigree. He's currently an assistant at Texas Tech, but I'm more impressed by his elite prep record. 224 wins, 39 losses at Sunrise. That trajectory reminds me a lot of Kevin Keats through the prep ranks. I like this model, and he could be the next winner in Albuquerque if Pitino bounces. Colorado State, Mike DeGeorge. Here's a guy with the opportunity to lead a Mountain West program after turning heads at the Division II level in Colorado and leading Cal Poly through a nice little turnaround at D1 in his first year. It's a big jump, but DeGeorge has shown he can handle it if this job were to open. And finally, Russell Turner is coming back to his East Coast roots to lead Richmond, a program that's been on the rise in the Atlantic 10. Let's be real, Mooney's got to go, man. Richmond deserves someone who can push them further into the spotlight, and Turner could be the one to do it. He is the model of consistency, leading a program with less resources in the Big West to the top 150 the last 13 years straight. Richmond would love consistency after the Mooney roller coaster, I would imagine. Next up, we've got College of Charleston. If Mack were to leave, which honestly seems like it could be on the table, we might just see the return of Greg Marshall. Yep, you heard that right. He's back at a job he's had before for just a few days, but now, here's the kicker. They're paying top 100 type money to the last 2 coaches and have more resources, so This is definitely a job that could pull in some serious talent. I've been there 5 or 6 times. It's also a nice place to live. That could make it less likely for Marshall since they have options, though. It's been 5 years since Marshall's last gig. And if he's made the necessary behavioral changes, I say he deserves another shot. No doubt he would have the best resume they could probably hire. But the game has changed a lot. Since he left with NIL and the portal, he might not be the same either. Next, down the ladder, we've got San Francisco and Matt Logie. Logie's got the chance to coach in a highly competitive mid-major conference with some serious West Coast connections. He's definitely in a good spot to make some noise. Over at Drake, Marty Richter might be stepping into the spotlight. Richter played a huge role in the Bulldogs' success under DeVries, and while Drake couldn't pass on McCullum, it could be Richter's time to shine if he were to leave. All right, let's talk about East Carolina. One of the more interesting jobs, in my opinion. Good God, man, how much talent do they waste? I mean, we're talking Tristan Newton, Javon Small, Jaden Gardner, Elijah Hughes, you name it. Heck, they even had 2 former All-Americans on the same team, and yet somehow they never cracked the top 180. With talent like that, it's borderline criminal failure. Now, if Wake Forest were to fire Steve Forbes, you better believe he's at the top of my list for ECU. But honestly, I think that's pretty unlikely. Still, ECU could be the perfect landing spot for someone looking for a transition. They've got deep pockets and can pay top 100 money in a talent-rich state. And here's the kicker. They've got almost zero expectations. This is the kind of job I'd target as a coach. High resources, low expectations, and high pay. It's the perfect recipe for success. Someone could absolutely win here with the kind of talent that rolls through. And you know what? It could even be a name like Marshall who they target. Let's not forget ECU's former assistants, Chilius and Steve DeMeo. These guys might actually have better resumes than the guy they hired last time. Over at another AAC school, Tulane has stalled. Kevin Ollie has the chance to reestablish himself in college hoops. This could be the comeback story. In my best Allen Iverson voice, I don't know a bad coach that has won a national title. He wasn't handed a ready-made team either. Calhoun was 2014 and lost in the first round his last year and left a team on probation. Ollie won the title in year 2 with one barely NBA player. There is something there, and last year he was a head coach in the NBA for about 30 games. Let's talk South Florida and Richie McKay. USF's got the cash. Lots of it. They paid Brian Gregory $1.6 million to lose. Yep, you heard that right. $1.6 million to lose. So McKay might just be eyeing that big payday before calling it a day. We'll see if the money talks here. Unfortunately, this job had to open up for some pretty awful reasons, but I think it might be one of the best mid-major jobs, like ECU, but even better with that sweet pay-to-expectations ratio. As for names, honestly, I'm not sure what to expect. McKay is a reach, but I think we could see some surprise names pop up that you wouldn't expect. Liberty, Dustin Kearns. If McKay leaves, Kearns could step in. A proven leader at programs with solid success, could be the perfect fit for Liberty's. LaSalle, Kyle Neptune, returning to a familiar Big Five program, but only if Dunphy retires and Neptune gets the boot. It's a tough business, but hey, a return to Philly could reignite his career. UNCW, Bart Lundy, spent most of his career in North Carolina. This could be the right move to bring that experience to a program with deep roots in the CAA. Louisiana, Joe Pasternak. He's doing great at Santa Barbara this year after a bit of a step back last season. Former coach in New Orleans, though, so maybe he's looking for a fresh start closer to home. He even interviewed for UNCW before. South Dakota State, Dean Oliver, an opportunity to coach a consistent mid-major with frequent NCAA appearances, plus he's got solid assistant coaching experience at North Dakota. Definitely someone who can handle the pressure. Princeton, John Thompson III, a potential return to his alma mater if the job opens up, back to where it all began for him. Could be the perfect moment to take Princeton to new heights. All right, Jim Crutchfield, he's 68, but hear me out. Imagine him bringing his magic to Division I for a few years as one last chapter, 35 minutes from FIU's campus. FIU has to move on, and this guy could commute if he had to. He's so close. That would be my move. Next up, John Becker. Here's the deal. He's had some solid years, but it feels like he's hit a bit of a plateau staring at a cliff. Maybe it's time to hit the reset button. Moving from the America East, yeah, that's an upgrade in competition. Less of a big fish in a small pond vibe. The shine's wearing off a bit with Vermont this year, and Becker might be looking for a fresh challenge after being there so long. Navy, Tony Bennett. Okay, stay with me on this one. It's all pie in the sky fun. Navy's got Tony Bennett. Just imagine it. No NIL drama, no wild recruiting chaos, just pure disciplined basketball. And let's be real, Navy would totally embrace his old school style. Pure coaching genius in a structured environment. That's the dream, right? Before you laugh, just remember Jim Calhoun retired and then coached a D3 or whatever it was after a few more years. This would just be about the coaching. Bellarmine, Chris Bridges. Now, they have already named a coach in waiting, but screw that. Why would you want to promote from within on the slide they have had? Bridges is a Kentucky guy with not one, but two NAIA national titles under his belt. The man knows how to win, no matter the level. He's got the pedigree. Now let's see what he can do at a bigger stage. He was a GA and student manager at Kentucky as well under Tubby. North Florida, Steve DeMeo. The man's had massive success in JUCO. It's baffling how a guy like this, who has been at many assistant jobs like St. John's, Providence, UCF, Hofstra, ECU, has never gotten a chance. Someone should call. Robert Morris, Ben Howlett is stepping up, transitioning from Division II coaching to D1 would be fun with his style. The successor to Crutchfield. Give him the same energy to Robert Morris. Let's see what a young guy can do there. Albany. And Jared Grasso, he's got the chops for it. He's proven himself as a program builder, and now he's got an opportunity to return to the America East, this time with more experience and a proven track record. Yeah, there was some controversy, but I'm for second chances after paying the penalty a few years for most. We've got about a dozen coaching changes left in our mock. Most of these are assistant coaches I've projected to various jobs, like Mike Rohn heading to Air Force, Justin Gainey to App State, and J.D. Luster taking over at Irvine. If you're a true sicko for this kind of content, you can find the entire mock on theresourcenexus.com. Now, before you hit next on your podcast player, let me implore you to like, review, and help us out if you want to see this podcast to continue. Here's the game plan. We're going to keep these semi-evergreen episodes rolling. Fun topics that stay relevant longer and give people a chance to discover us. Eventually, we'll dive into more current topics, but honestly, if you're chasing breaking news, you're probably tuning into the CBS pod or wherever you get it from. Our focus has always been the big picture stuff, or more in depth, if you will. But hey, stay tuned, because I've got more episodes lined up. Who knows? Maybe down the line, if there are enough listeners, we'll bring on some guests and really shake things up. We'll see how it evolves. Until then, check you later.
Cool. Guess we'll see you around.
All right, check you later.
Bye.
Wait, man, why are you always such a dork, man?
What are you talking
Check you
about?
later. Check you later.